Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We feel the turtle, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the shell and tell. They come with all the facts. It's the shell and tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the shell and tell. They come with all the facts. It's the shell and tell.
Welcome back, Shell and Tellers. This is Ryan. It's Friday, February 12th, bringing you guys some new content. As you've seen recently, that's kind of been our goal. We're kind of diversifying the Shell and Tell, getting you different types of shows, different types of coverage. If you haven't checked out the last episode, we did Ryan's Rants. It was my one-man show. It was my first shot at it. Don't be too harsh. I think it turned out pretty well, actually. It's about our will they, won't they with Turge. Will we extend him? Will they fire him? Why we feel the need to complain after every loss and just stay quiet after every win, and what the options are there. So if you haven't checked that out, please check out Ryan's Rants. It's very interesting. And then also, we're bringing you the weekly segment from the Birdland BS show. Birdland BS is our parent company, the reason that we exist. It's a Baltimore-based sports show covering Ravens, Orioles, and Terps. The Terps segment grew to the point, because I just kept enforcing it, it's more and more Terps coverage, to the point where we brought you your own show. So we're going to be bringing you that segment from the Tuesdays 7:30 live broadcast of Birdland BS every week as well. In that same vein, I've brought you a little bit Terps-esque coverage here. It's a little bit outside of our Terps window. I found a very unique opportunity to have a national championship official from the game this January between Alabama and Ohio State. And I thought, as a football fan, outside of even being a Terps fan, this is a very interesting opportunity to look at the third team on the field. We look at the Terps and their opponents very frequently, and we never really look at that third team that's working together every Saturday. So I hope you guys enjoy listening to this interview as much as I enjoyed doing it. Without further ado, we bring in our special guest. So I want to introduce everybody to our next guest. We have Dan Scallon here. I've had a very interesting opportunity thanks to a coworker. Sarah, thank you very much. We had discussed Dan in the past. He is an official at the collegiate ranks, has been in a lot of big games. Then I saw her post recently that you were in the national championship game, and I reached out to her again and was like, look, this is the time to make it happen. This will be when everybody thinks it's the best opportunity. So thanks for joining us, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Man, so like I said, you just were in the national championship spotlight, and you got to know, how do you get to that level? How do they pick the officiating for big games like this?
Every conference is a little bit different. So at the end of the year, each conference will get assigned what bowl contest that they will be assigned. Their officials will be assigned to pick. In our conference, it goes by. So we think our conference goes by, your number one position, your number one guy or girl at every position will work their number one bowl game, and then the number two guy or girl at every position will work the number two bowl game, and so forth and so on. So I just, I was fortunate enough to have, I guess, a pretty good season, and ranked out number one. At least that's what I believe. I ranked out number one at my position in my conference. So, just kind of good fortune, really. If you, there's certainly years where, you may be number one and your number one game isn't the national championship game, So it's just, it's, having a good season at the right time.
Okay, so the Big 12's number one official was supposed to go this year, the national championship game, and that's not always true every year, is what you're saying.
So this year it was like, our number one referee was Brandon Cruz. He was the referee on the national championship game. Our number one line judge was a guy named Derek Anderson. He was our line judge, and so forth and so on.
Okay. And those rankings come from like coaching rankings or peers ranking you, or how does it really get together?
No. So after every game, we get graded on every play of that game by an observer. So we have an observer on the game, and then we have a grader on the game. Typically, the grader is a a long time Power Five conference official, or a retired NFL official, or a current NFL official. So we have, we have a couple different graders in our program. Our program is called CFO West, which is College Football Officials West. And in that program, we'll work Big 12 assignments, and we'll work Mountain West assignments. And then our feeder program is called the Southland Conference.
Okay, very cool. So we spent a lot of time on Shell and Tell talking about the Terps and the Terps opponents, but we kind of ignore that third team on the field, you guys. So how much of a team sport is really the officiating world?
More than you can even imagine. We typically work with the same 10 officials on every game. So I'll get assigned a crew. I'll get assigned to a crew sometime in, every year is a little different, but last year with the wake of the pandemic, we didn't get our crews until I think it was late June last year. Typically we'll get our crews in March or April, and then we'll work a spring contest together, like a spring game or a spring scrimmage or practice. What was your question again?
How much of a team sport is it?
Yeah. So, I mean, you really work very, very closely with your crew. We have, like I said, there's 8 on-field officials, and then there's 2 officials in the booth. One's a replay official, one's a replay communicator. And on the field, we use something called O2O, which is like an official's device where we can we can talk to each other on the field because, as being a season ticket holder of Maryland, there's times the games get really loud, so we have a device in our ear that we can speak with the guys on the field and the replay communicator in the booth. Okay. And the communication between the on-field officials and the guy and the replay communicator in the booth is simply for him to tell us whether or not, we're going to replay the previous play for potential targeting or whatever it may be, as it comes down to it.
Oh no, the dreaded targeting. Yeah. It's became a heck of a call in the collegiate ranks. For good reason, they're trying to get it out, but every once in a while you're like, oh no, that seemed normal.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I grew up my whole life being a football fan, and those targeting hits, when I was growing up were great hits. You used to get a helmet sticker for them, but I think as much as, there's times where I'm like, man, that's just a clean, hard hit, but by rule it's targeting. When it first came in, I was kind of a little bit like, man, this is going to, diminish the product on the field, the game. But, after having it for, I guess the targeting went in probably 10 years ago now. But what I think is that it's going to continue. It's going to help the sport continue. Yeah. Because there's a lot of suburban mothers out there who don't want their children playing sports, playing football. Because of
the dangerous thought process between football.
because of the head collisions and
they've changed in every sport. I mean, you're not allowed to head the ball in soccer even till high school now at this point. So
really,
or at least that's where I am is the rules.
I did not know that.
So this concussions is definitely a big problem. My father actually had a concussion from a car accident a couple years ago, and I can tell you he's still not the same person. So hands off to these football players that can
I agree.
Time after time get exposed to this and be fine.
I agree. I mean, it stinks a little bit because the big hits people want to see, but it's good for the sport. I believe it's good for the continued success of the sport of football. I mean, Americans love football. Most of us do. So if you want it to stick around, we got to try to get concussions or at least limit concussions in the sport.
Yeah. So you talked about growing up. Obviously, dedicating this much of your life to a sport, you had to be a bit of an athlete growing up. What sports did you play?
So I played pretty much every sport when I was a kid, but when I got to high school, it was mostly football and lacrosse.
Okay.
So, it kind of, I kind of fell in love with the game of football, and I wasn't by any means this standout athlete, but I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed the time with friends. I enjoyed the feeling of team, and it kind of my love for the game just kind of went on from there.
I also saw an article about your family. So growing up, you were surrounded by officiating. Your uncles, your father, I think. Is that the case?
Yeah. So my dad is one of 10, and I have 5 uncles and 6, including my dad, and they were all at one point high school varsity football officials. So I actually had the opportunity when I first started, like I guess I was like 21 or 22 years old. I worked a high school varsity game, and every single guy on the field had the last name Scanlon. So that was a pretty cool experience. So that's kind of how I got into it. I was I made the decision when I was done in high school. Do I try and go play Division III somewhere, or do I just kind of try to stay in the sport some other way? And naturally with all my family, and I have cousins as well that officiate. My brother officiates now. No one officiates at the division, the collegiate level, but everyone is, working little kids games and men's, like rough touch stuff. And so, and everyone really still lives close to me. So it's just kind of, that's how I got really into it, and then once I started working, like the little kid stuff and junior varsity high school and varsity high school, I kind of just fell in love with officiating. And a couple of local guys around here gave me a heads up, like, hey, you might be you might be pretty decent at this if you put some time and effort into it. And I also officiated basketball at that point. And basketball was really my first love. Like I loved the challenge of basketball, like officiating basketball, because it's very, very difficult.
That's got to be the hardest. I've always thought that. I've talked before. I umpired a little bit of softball when I was younger, and so I have paid attention to officials more than most. And basketball, hands down, is the hardest because the fans that are yelling at you really could have had a better view of that than you did. Constantly. I was as an umpire, don't argue balls and strikes with me. You don't know better than me.
Yeah,
I'm right here. But basketball that's got to be stressful to let people get in your head that you did really make the wrong call, even though everyone's going to be telling you you're wrong 50% of the time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. It depends where you're at. If you're at a home team, it's more like 90-10 if you're wrong,
Yeah.
But that's the challenge of officiating that I love. It's competing with yourself to be correct.
Yeah.
And that's what really drew me to really love the advocation or art of officiating is that challenge of continuing to try to get better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being able to block out all the hecklers, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. When did you know you were actually able to make a career out of officiating?
I don't know if you would consider it a career. I hope one day for it to be a career. But
you got to step up one more level. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. You probably have to get to the next day of the week to really make a career out of it.
Attention at NFLPA. We have a referee for you.
No, I mean it's something that you just have to love to do. I mean, because there's a lot of time away from your family. I have two little boys at home, and as much as they like seeing Daddy on TV, it's not like seeing Daddy in their living room. You know what I mean? So that's been a challenge for me the last couple seasons because my oldest is 2.5, and then my youngest is just born in July. So I mean, the youngest doesn't have any clue what's going on at this point, but my oldest son, he gets bummed when I have to, travel on Friday mornings, and he understands it. But I come home, you know what I mean? It's tough on you and it's tough on, your wife, You have to have support from your wife for sure, to really be able to enjoy, the game.
Yeah. So you talked about leaving on Fridays. What's the average work week in the NCAA collegiate ranks about?
I mean, when we're actually away from our families, I usually leave, somewhere in the morning to early afternoon on Friday, because typically this year was a little different with the pandemic and everything being virtual and Zoom. So we didn't have to be in as early, but in a typical year, we have to be in town by 5 p.m. the night prior to the contest. And then, we'll. So you say the work week, and I'm trying to what people see us do is the 3.5 hours or 3 hours and 40 minutes or whatever it may be on Saturdays, but our work week is usually 6 or 7 days long. I mean, I'm constantly looking at film. I'm constantly just trying to break down our film, break down other guys in our conference's film, just to see how their plays were graded and how I would view those plays. So it's just a constant battle to get better than you were the week before.
Yeah.
So I'll quickly go through, what my typical week in season looks like. So obviously, game weekend, I leave, like I said, Friday, work the game Saturday, get on usually the earliest flight home I can on Sunday morning, so I can get home to the boys and my wife. And sometimes I'll look at a little bit of film on Sunday, but for the most part, I kind of take Sunday off and just enjoy my time with my family, and hopefully catch an Eagles game or some NFL games where I know guys are from our conference or guys that I've met through officiating are working games, and I just like to watch NFL games. But then Monday, I usually get up and I start my breakdown of my game film. So our game film will be loaded to a site that we have access to, and then I'll just go through it. And usually it takes me about 4 hours to really go through every single play and break down a game film. Sometimes 5 hours. So that'll usually take me, because I still have a full-time job, but that'll usually take me 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, to really break down our game film, and then we'll go back and forth as crew on how they think, how I view the plays and how they view the plays. And then Wednesday we'll start getting prepared for our next week. So I'm typically in charge of scout film for our crew, either one team or the other team. So we'll have 2 guys in charge of scout film. And we'll just try to take a look at tendencies. Maybe they have weird formations. Maybe on kickoff they're very, very tight to the restraining line, and we have to be on our toes. Just kind of things like that. And that's helped. Because 15 years ago the officials couldn't do that. It was just like, let's you give me what I'm presented on the field, and I got to make a decision. But now with technology, we're able to kind of prepare ourselves a little bit more. I mean, we still have to go out there and call legal, illegal, but at least we have a little bit of game film that we can take a look at it. So that'll be Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday we'll do a Zoom. We did a Zoom call either Friday or Thursday this year, but typically our pre-games which are about 2.5, 3 hours long. And we'll just go through, various different situations that can occur. They'll be held on Fridays when we get in town, or if it's a night game on Saturday, we'll do them on Saturday morning.
Okay. So you're just coming off a national championship game. I guess it's safe to say that's the biggest game of your career so far, or am I missing one?
It's funny. They're all big games, to be honest with you. I mean, anytime that there's millions of people watching, they're all big games. I mean, obviously the national championship's a huge game. I actually had the pleasure of working it a season prior in 2017 when Alabama played at Clemson down in Tampa. So this was my second one that I worked. But really, I mean, you try not to process in your head the magnitude of it. You try to just go out and work it like every other game. league games in our league and the Big Ten, which is Maryland's in. They're all big games for all the officials. Um, so I try not to say, oh, this was the biggest game of my career, or that was the biggest game of my career, because I could be working Kansas State, Iowa State on a random Saturday in October, and I'm telling you that's the biggest game of my
right
career in that
Yeah.
week. You know what I mean? I really try to go week to week to week, just like players do. Players go day to day to day, and that's how we are. We kind of trying to schedule our weeks out on game week, similar every week, so that we're prepared, just like the players are. That they're in there putting their work in. They're getting in the weight room. They're working on their game film. They're practicing. So, we owe it to the players and the coaches that, obviously our calls can decide games. So we owe it to those members and the schools and the alumni and everyone who's involved in college football. We owe it to them to really put our work in. And, I like to think that most Division I officials around the country do that. And sometimes it's just about, having that training and getting plays right.
So it sounds like it's more like a rinse and repeat things, but there's got to be some games that have stuck in your head. What are the more memorable games? Maybe an ending that you were a part of, or just a stadium that was crazy loud. What are the ones that stick in your head?
So a lot of our league games are fun. Like I work in the Big 12 conference, and that's the conference that I work in. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but a lot of our league games are really, really fun to work. The Red River rivalry, Texas OU, is probably one of my favorite games I've ever worked. I mean, it's something when you're standing on the field and you have at the 50-yard line a split between orange and red, and there's just something to that. It's at the Texas State Fair. They're not neither. Every time it's played, it's not a home game for either team. There's just something about Red River that I've really, really enjoyed working. I've only worked it one time. I hope to be able to work it again. But that's a really, really fun game. My first game I ever worked at Kansas State was really fun. I mean, it was Kansas State versus at Southland. I think it was Stephen F. Austin. And that was memorable for me because, prior to working that game, I worked Westchester, Bloomsburg Division II, playoff game, So I went from there to working at Kansas State. It was kind of it was eye-opening for sure, It was just a totally different magnitude of the game of football. It was a lot of fun and really, really made me fall even more in love with, the art of officiating.
It's very cool. Any memorable interactions with fans or coaches that have stuck with you in your head?
The most memorable interaction with someone in a football game was I was in my second or third year in the Big 12 conference, and Texas was playing, I believe it was Kansas State. And Kansas State was driving, and they got to the 2-yard line, and it was third down. And, they go for it on third down, and they get stuffed on third down. So now we're going to fourth down, and they're going fast because they're trying to catch the defense off guard. They're trying to catch the defense off guard. Well, just prior to fourth down being snapped, we get paged. When I first got into the Big 12, we used to get paged by replay. Now it's more of something in our ear, so It's a little different. So we were paged by replay. So I'm trying to get to, because my position on the field is I'm supposed to prevent the snap from happening if there's a substitution so I'm trying to get to the quarterback and the center to prevent the snap from happening. Well, the snap goes off, and I'm running in and. To kill the clock or to, stop the game, our signal is this, we wave overhead. So I'm waving overhead. Well, the play goes off, and Texas stuffs them again on fourth down. Well, You know how like when a defense makes a big stop on fourth down, they crawl off the pile and run upfield the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Well, they ran upfield the opposite direction, and my hands were above my head, and I took a helmet clip right to my rib, and I actually broke my rib on the play. That was
Rough.
the most injured I ever got, in a game. And that was that was late in the second quarter. So we go into halftime, and I have a trainer come in. They wrap me up. I take Advil or some kind of anti-inflammatory, and I finish the game. But right when I'm going out to officiate the second half, I'm sore. I'm not really I'm trying to stay focused because
you're like, I don't want to put my hands up here. It really hurts.
No, I didn't want to breathe heavy. Because I was in a lot of pain, but I wanted to finish the game because it's like the competitor in me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that I can kind of block out the pain to continue to work. My legs weren't broken. It was just a little pain in my, my midsection. Well, as I'm walking out, I kind of had my head down because I'm just trying to really, mentally block out what I'm feeling in my ribs. And there's this big paw in front of me, and it looks like a baseball glove. This hand is so big. And I look up, and it's Roger Clemens. And I went, and he said, son, he said, you're a tough kid. I think you took the hardest hit in the first half. And he shook my hand, and I was like, he's like, you know who I am? I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. You're Roger Clemens. Everybody knows who you are. So that was probably my most memorable fan experience that, I can remember in my officiating.
That's very cool. Very cool. So next question's more about the negative experience with fans. And don't lie to me, because I'm only 4 rows off the visiting sideline at Maryland Stadium. I know y'all can hear me. How clear do you hear the hecklers?
It kind of depends when the hecklers are heckling. You know what I mean?
Yep, got to time it right with the crowd.
Yeah. Well, if you time it right, like if it's right before, like if we're in a dead ball period where TV's out and we're in a media timeout, you can hear them. You can hear them for sure.
It's probably more entertaining than anything else.
It is. It is. I'll be honest with you. It really is entertaining. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for the most part, if it's you're heckling when it's like everyone's booing, you just hear 80,000 people booing. You don't hear that one guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I try to be pretty easy on the refs. The only time I ever really lost on the refs, the last season in the ACC for Maryland, I swear we will find an email someday that said we were not allowed to win a game that year because every time we got more than 10 yards, it came back. And I'm like, this is not okay. So I lost it that whole season.
But wait, Maryland's in the Big Ten.
Yeah, so Maryland was in the ACC for my whole time growing up. It was about, about 6 years ago. They left the ACC and had to pay a $50 million buyout. So the ACC never thought that they would lose a team when you had that kind of buyout on your contract. Right. But they were real mad that Maryland was walking. And all of a sudden that year, I swear, man, literally every 10 yards that we got was coming back the whole year long. We only won 3 games versus nobodies. Anytime the ball was in the air, you just waited for the yellow flag to go up. I know you're not going to agree with me because you're an official, but I swear that memo is going to come out someday, and the ACC is going to owe us a lot of money.
Well, look, I can't speak to the experience of those officials, but I can assure you one thing, because obviously you have friends and family and that are fans of teams and all, and everyone's like, oh, it's fixed. I hear it. It's fixed all the time.
Yeah.
And there's one thing I can assure fans is we're just out there trying to get plays right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe Maryland just fouled a lot that year.
Yeah, maybe we were just bad, but it just felt gross. And it felt like a reason. I'm not usually a conspiracy guy, but that year I was like, I know.
I'd have to look at the game film.
Yeah.
But
well, if you're ever bored on the off season, the last season for Maryland, the ACC was rough. The grades should have been real bad.
Was that 2012 when they left?
I can't come up with it now. I think it's 6 to 8 years ago, so it's pretty close. I think it might be 6 years ago, though.
No, it wasn't 6 because I just finished my 7th season. And my first season in the Big 12, West Virginia came to Maryland.
Yes, which was great games. I love that.
I think Maryland won. I think West Virginia won on a walk-off.
So that leads me to my next question. Have you ever done a Maryland game? Were you officiating that game, you're saying?
So my first year, up in the Big 12, I have a very different transgression to Power 5 football. Most guys who work like, all the other positions, which it's referee, umpires, field judge, side judge, and so on, you typically go like Division 2, Division 3 to like Division 1, not Power 5, you know what I mean? You go like to maybe the Colonial Ivy Patriot, and then maybe you work up to like the Mountain West, and then you go to Power 5. But I was just very fortunate. I was attending officiating camps at the time, and I was identified by a guy by the name of Walt Anderson down in a camp in Florida, and it was an officiating camp. You're just there to learn and try to really get better. And so I was identified by Walt in that season, and I went and worked another season in Division II, and then I went to Walt's. I went to the CFO West, which was at that time our supervisor was Walt Anderson, but now it's Greg Burks. But at that time, I went to another camp out in Reno, Nevada, and I got hired from Division II right into Power 5. Now, that doesn't really ever happen, but the reason it happened for me was I think I just fit a mold of what they were looking for center judges, which was most center judges now are like prior Division 3 and 2 and smaller conference Division 1 referees, and that's what my position was at that point. So I got hired into the Big 12 straight from Division 2 and 3, and that just usually doesn't happen. I was just very fortunate. I was at the right place at the right time. And that's kind of how my progression to the Big 12 happened.
Very cool. So were you officiating that Maryland West Virginia game that you were talking about, or is it just viewing?
So that game, my first season, I worked. I think it was like maybe 8 games at center judge, and then there was a handful of games I worked as an alternate official, and I happened to be an alternate official at that game.
Okay.
So I wasn't directly – well, I was involved, but I wasn't directly on the field involved in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my only time I had an opportunity to work down in Maryland.
Okay.
Now, I think West Virginia's going back to Maryland this year.
Yeah, we were supposed to play last year too, so let's hope it happens this year because I really enjoy that rivalry.
Yeah, that should be a good game. I'd love to go to that because I'm outside of Philadelphia, so that's one of the only games of the year I'll be able to drive to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, if it's not any kind of violation, feel free to give me a call. I'll probably have a few tickets for you. We got 12 tickets down there, so I'm always, Maryland's not the biggest sell in the world. Unfortunately, people need to get involved with it's a very reasonable price ticket and an awful lot of fun. You can spend all day down there, but there's times where I'm using 8 of 12 tickets. So
yeah,
give your boy a call.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to take you up on that offer, but I think that's got to be some kind of conflict of interest, and I'd have to politely decline.
That's fine. That's no problem. That's why I said it, just in case it's not. Yeah. So let's talk about that then. So are there any fringe benefits in a normal year? This year, I'm sure you did not get anything, but do you have tickets for family or anything to any of these games so they can come see the third team on the field?
I've been able to get tickets. So we're actually one of the only conferences in the country that they don't provide tickets for the officials, like complimentary tickets for officials. Most conferences get 2 tickets. We just happen, it works out in the contracts. That's above my pay grade. I just go and I work football games. You know what I mean?
I feel you.
But we do have the opportunity to buy tickets for our conference games and our games that we're involved in. And I've been able. My family's traveled to a handful of games.
Good. And right now you're working Pac-12, and obviously you're living in Pennsylvania, right? So
I'm in the Big 12, and I'm working. I live in Pennsylvania. Yeah,
okay.
So I typically fly every Friday to usually my layovers in Dallas, and I go somewhere from Dallas.
Yeah. So it's not like you are right around hometown there. It's easy for your family to show up. So maybe as the kids get a little older, that's a bigger problem.
Yeah, you gotta fly. Although sometimes we get games. I worked down at Navy this past year. So in the beginning of the year this year, we weren't allowed to fly.
Yeah.
Because, obviously the pandemic, and they just didn't want the officials flying. They were still testing us, rigorously, but we weren't able to fly. So I worked a lot of West Virginia games this year because I'm able to drive there. It's a pretty far drive. It's about 4.5 hours. I worked down at Navy when they played BYU or the first game of the season this year. So I was able to drive to a handful. I think I worked like 5 of my first 7 weeks, and then they opened it up for us to fly.
All right, man. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything that you want to plug, anything you want to talk about before I let you go?
So being that you guys are a Maryland based, podcast, if there's any of your like viewers or anyone who's like looking to maybe get into officiating or just are more interested in it, there is a clinic for football officials that I'm involved in and I participate in every year. It's called Tom Beard's Football Official Clinic. Should you guys, if anybody reaches out to you, they can get my contact info through you. If anybody is interested in it, I'd be glad to share that with them, some information on the Tom Beard Football Clinic. It's just a great clinic. It's the first one I ever went to. I always try to get back to it. I attend it every year as a clinician, and there's big names attached to the clinic. Most people that have from the Baltimore, D.C. area that are working in the NFL have gone through Tom Beard and Tom Beard Clinic. If they want any information about it, it's tbfoc.org.
Okay, so is this for like people that are officiating at like the rec and high school level that are trying to get to the next step, or is this
Correct.
Just for Joe Blow?
No, it's people that are officiating at that are trying to get to the next step.
Okay.
I'm actually thinking about starting my own little clinic locally for to just try to get, because across the country people are struggling to find officials, and it probably comes back a little bit to the question about how much do you hear the hecklers. Well, you hear the hecklers a whole lot when you're working in a gym, working 10-year-old basketball. You hear them a whole lot more there than you do working in front of 60, 70, 80,000. So it's a dying really profession because nobody wants to do it. No one wants to go and work for $35 an hour cash to try to officiate a game, but it's a necessary evil for sport in general. And it's not just football, it's every sport where we're struggling to find officials. So I'm actually thinking about starting my own little thing just to try to get more involvement in officiating. Because I'm passionate about, officiating and football as well.
Yeah, I do think it's sad. I mean, the officiating, it's hard to find right now. Like rec coaches are being really difficult. I mean, everybody's working 2 jobs. Everybody's trying to keep, ends meet and doesn't have the time for it. And then, like you said, the heckling things, I mean, that was 2002 to 2008 that I was umpiring girls softball. And like the number of people that I had to throw off the field.
Yeah.
That would talk to me, who's 6'2", 270 pounds, and wanted to talk trash. I can't imagine what some people go through with like bigger time things, or even just that you would think wouldn't be so aggressive. Like at my age, I'm like, I'm 16 years old. If you hit me, you're going to jail. If I hit you, you're probably going to sleep. Why are you yelling at me? Why are you yelling at me?
It's sport, man. It makes people a little bit crazy. You know what I mean? But that's what's also drives you to love it too, because it makes you a little crazy, it makes you, that's why, being an official, it takes kind of the fan out of the game, because I'm seeing it down the middle. I'm seeing it black and white. And when you're a fan, you don't see it that way.
You don't.
I can show you, 100 plays from last season where if you're a fan of that team, you think it's holding. And if you're playing that team, you think it's not holding. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of the challenge that we love as officials is being the guy who actually can make that decision without having to care who wins or loses a game. They just want to get plays right.
Yeah, see that like psychiatric study where they like Photoshop the Maryland logo onto some other team, and I feel like it's different even though I watch the same clip.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
All right.
I mean, if there's anybody, that watches your podcast and wants more information on, how to maybe get involved in officiating, I'd love to steer them in the right direction. Glad you could have me on here, and happy I could shed a little light on the officials because, typically during the season, we don't want any light on us. Our best games are when the officials are not mentioned at all. I mean, that's how I was very proud of the efforts of our crew in the national championship game this year because I went. Now, obviously, I go back and I watch the TV copy, and then, the TV makes the football game such a production, where I just go out and I focus and concentrate on my areas of responsibility on the game. But, I do typically watch the TV, and there was really not any mention of us on the TV, and that's like a perfect game for the officials. They don't mention us at all. We're like perfect,
Yeah, you guys like a whole team of punters. You can only mess up. You can't do your job right.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank Sarah once again for putting us together, and I think people are really going to enjoy this inside look on the third team on the field, man. Thank you.
Hey, if you ever need me to come on again, let me know.
All right. When we have the next really bad call, you'll be my replay official.
Maybe not in those circumstances.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Bye. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the latest episode from Shell and Tell. Very cool to have that inside look. If you enjoyed what you're seeing, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts, would be a great help. We got lots of 5-star reviews, but it's been a minute since we got a new one, so drop us a line down there. It'd be helpful. And until next time, here's to wishing all is well under the shell.